Hi everyone, I hope you're all well, safe and ready for a battle royale, because this is going to be a long, very long video, likely stretching over 2 days, because I have reached the very end of my tether. My last remaining nerve has been stretched to breaking point. At first, I rather calmly replied to inquiries, and then finally I got the chance to go listen to Dan Wootton and Tom Sykes' videos about Harry and African parks, and I literally exploded. Actually, not exploded. I burst into tears and I just cried and cried and cried. I could not stop crying. And why? Because nearly 700,000 people are listening to this shit stirrer clickbait creator who clings onto every bandwagon he can find and then flaps his lips without doing proper research. Angry is not the word to describe what I felt. And then, to top it all, he gets P. Dina in to talk about the subject. P. Dina. Why? What does she know about African parks or even Africa? She's born and bred American as far as I know. Did he use her because she is black and she allowed him to use her for her blackness because it will mean more clicks and views on her next video? Is that right, P. Dina? I don't know. I'm honestly asking. To my listeners, I will tag everyone I mention in this video. In other words, what I say here, I'm saying to their faces, not behind their backs. And they are welcome to reply to this video by emailing me at bookwormonthecase@gmail.com. I do not do lives because I had a stroke at 55 and have a skew mouth. So there you have it. I shall, or I am prepared, however, to read their response, if any. I doubt there will be any, but if there is, I will read it in a dedicated video for the sake of truth and transparency. Okay, moving on. The title of Dan's video is already misleading. Biggest scandal yet. Prince Harry reeling from torture, in capital letters, allegations, amid Meghan Markle Ebola shame. Really? Firstly, there are the dumb twats in this world who will go read that title and believe Harry was involved with some kind of torture of someone somewhere. And as for Meghan and Ebola, the nonsense, and it is nonsense, regarding Meghan and Ebola is basically because some of her media discussions and appearances and not mentioning the so-called Ebola virus or shit like that. Totally benign and not worth wasting our breath or time on. Meghan can barely solve her own problems. How is she supposed to do and say much, if anything, about Ebola? She is no doctor, no medical person, no nurse. She is no expert on any illness. It is way better for her to keep her mouth shut about things she knows nothing about, or otherwise we will come and accuse her of jumping on each and every bandwagon. So decide what you want. You can't 1 minute say Meghan climbs on every bandwagon and the first time she doesn't jump on a bandwagon, then we blame her for that too. It doesn't work that way. Even if I hate the woman, it doesn't work that way. Anyway, so Dan kicks off his video by talking about the rape and torture scandal facing Prince Harry. It's not facing Prince Harry. It's got fuck all to do with Prince Harry. And it is about time, isn't it? Because we have been talking about the absolute humanitarian catastrophe attached to Prince Harry's African Parks charity for years. Dan Wootton's words. What utter clickbait bullshit. What utter low-class, low-effort, cowardly, supposed reporting. Dan is still talking about the 2023-2024. Yes, it spilled over into 2024, and because of the media, even over into 2025 event, when 2 of African Parks' 5,000 rangers. Now, there was a third ranger implicated, but that went away, so I guess he wasn't guilty. But anyway, where these 2 out of 5,000 rangers were accused of rape and abuse of someone or persons in the Baka tribe. In any event, there was an entire neutral and outside investigation launched, which involved a British law firm and a group of anthropologists into, and not only at the time, the rape and abuse, or to be precise, the so-called whipping of a group within the Baka clan in the Congo by these 2, possibly 3 African Park rangers, but into the total and complete treatment of the Baka people. And the job of these anthropologists was then to find solutions as to how African Parks, the rangers, and other organizations can coexist with those within the Baka and other tribes. Those people who prefer to and insist on living the traditional way. At the end of the day, 2 rangers were handed over to the authorities in the Congo. They were obviously found guilty, and let me tell you, prisons in Africa are not like prisons in South Africa or then America. Not at all. Most of these northern African prisons are like hell on earth. So before I continue with what African Parks did after these reports were finalized, I would like to ask Dan Wootton this. What the F did you and your woke brigade want Harry to do about 2 out of 5,000 rangers who misbehaved in the Congo? Did you want him to fly there and fight 120 armed groups and militia which operate in the Congo, battle a rare strain of Ebola, wade through the jungle, and have a bare-fisted fight with African Park rangers? Stupid question? Well then, seriously, what did you and do you want Harry Mountbatten Windsor to do about something which was handled by African Parks, by international law, and by the authorities in the Congo in 2023 already? I do not understand what Dan Wootton and his woke squad wants except to bring up the same shit over and over and over, and to over-dramatize it in order to fill their own pockets. Dan says African Parks refuses to talk about it. They are like the monarchy. Don't explain, don't complain, and don't explain. Bullshit. African Parks have addressed this over and over and over, and they have also issued 2 lengthy statements and 2 lengthy reports on it. What the fuck does Dan Ignoramus Wooten and Tom Sykes want more? And don't get me started on Survival International. Survival International are worse and less effective than Greta Thunberg and her eco-warriors. If I really wanted to, I could tell how some of their people pay the pygmy and others with alcohol and rubber slops to pose for photographs. But we won't fall to their level, will we? Besides, I'm a bit of a humanitarian warrior myself, not liking how some governments, not organizations, but governments are treating their indigenous people. I mean, like Labour and Uncle Tootia Keir. But again, I will give my opinion and retreat because I did not vote for Tootia Keir. You did. And I don't mean my subscribers. I'm just pointing into the ether, okay? Anyway, hopefully you will understand what I mean. British and American politics are only my business up to a certain point. Beyond that, it is for the British and Americans to deal with and solve. But I digress. I will post links to African Park's 2 statements regarding the Baka people and the 2023 incident so you can go and read it for yourself. So according to Dan and Tom, African Parks did nothing. A bit of word salad and that is that. Rubbish, lies, clickbait and bullshit. They have worked their asses off and spent millions to bring some sort of order to that region of the Congo. Anthropologists had drawn up the Odzala Indigenous Peoples Plan, and an anthropologist who worked on the plan was appointed to the board. African Parks also went into partnership with 2 Congolese human rights organizations, which, of course, they are largely funding. But never mind. And together, they have increased the visits to the Odzala area to monitor and support the communities. Reviews of access rights have been undertaken. The rangers involved were fired and handed over to law enforcement authorities. So, next, let me give you true statistics on where things currently stand at Odzala. The park is 3.3 million acres in size, which had been broken up into 3 zones. Approximately 10,000 people, Bantu and indigenous groups, live in 54 villages around the park. These communities have rights in 2 of the 3 zones, which amounts to 1.1 million acres. Now, to give you an idea of how big 1.1 million acres are, Rhode Island is smaller at 988,000 acres. Yosemite National Park is smaller at 747,900 acres. Cape Town is only 608,000 acres. London is only 390,000 acres. Houston is 370,900 acres. All smaller than the area made available to 10,000 people at Otsala in the Congo. Now, I hope this helps you to visualize how big an area is indeed available to only these 10,000 people. So, come again, Dan, Tom Sykes, and the woke, dope-smoking, rubber flip-flop trading warriors of Survival International. Come for me and prove me wrong. You can't, because I'm not wrong. You clickbait peddlers. Anyway, let's continue. Their access to 1.1 million acres include hunting rights, harvesting of flora and honey, access to medicinal plants, wood, fruit, etc. The third area can also be accessed with permits for cultural practices. Okay, so where lies the issue? With everything these people are allowed to do, of course, there are things they are not allowed to do, like commercial logging, commercial poaching, and commercial mining, among a few other things. Now, with the commercial in this context, they mean more than for own use. But does the Baka people like that? Fuck no. They want to sell rhino horn and elephant tusk and armadillo hide and monkey claws and so forth and so forth. And the worst is that most of them have no clue about the real value and more often than not are paid next to nothing by smugglers. For example, rhino horn is worth about $60,000 on the Asian black market, but local poachers may be paid about $500 if they are lucky. So Dan and Tom and the woke brigade had been whining and whinging for 3 years, wanting African parks to say more and more and more. And I ask you, about what? What the fuck do you want to hear more about that particular incident? African parks and the groups they work with in a number of countries have daily issues to deal with. They cannot be stuck on one issue for years on end. Like Dan Whitten himself said, it is time. Yes, time for the woke brigade and the clickbaiters to open their eyes and do their due diligence and stop doing damage to organizations and people who may not be perfect, but who are doing more good than bad. Stop it, and stop it now. Do your homework before you go on a public platform and spill sewage. One prime example of the kind of thing African parks had to deal with, other than this, is, for instance, this, and I read it from their statement. On the 27th of July 2024, they reported, "It is with deep regret that African Parks reports that on the night of 24th of July, 5 African Park rangers, and I repeat, 5 African Park rangers were killed in an attack by an unidentified armed group not far from the Macraw River in West National Park, Benin." But you won't report on this, Dan Whitten, will you? Why don't you ask why Harry did not talk about this, about the 5 rangers killed? Why didn't he mention this? Because it does not suit your overdramatic, fake, shocked narrative. Why, Dan Whitten, and for that matter your friend Tom Sykes, don't you talk about the 120 active armed groups and militias creating massive internal displacement of over 7.8 million people in the Congo. But you will whinge for years about 10,000 Baka people, and they're not even all Baka. And Tom, why are you talking shite? Because you only read one line and you did not read any further? Lying, saying Chad broke all contact with African parks. That is not true, my friend. There were disagreements over management and money and boundaries, etc., etc. And it was reported on the 8th of October that they are going into serious negotiations which may end in breaking of the ties or whatever. But if you continued reading, you would have noticed that it was all sorted out, and by the 17th of October, African Parks and Chad reaffirmed and reinstated management agreements for key protected areas. Tom Sykes, here's a tip. Go use Google before you talk shit. It does not help to go read one sentence of an article or to watch a video by a nondescript channel. There were disagreements, but it was sorted out via renegotiation and additional investments in Chad. Of course, money always talks, especially in Africa. Okay, and now that I've proven it, are you going to say, sorry, Tom? No, he won't, because why should he, after 100,000 people clicked on his video, and that's all he cares about? And I am sick of it, so sick of this kind of bullshit that I'm making a solemn promise here. I cannot handle Harry's mannerisms, his entitlement and his bullshit overall. But from now on, I shall fully fight on his side when someone like Dan Whitten comes out with this kind of bullshit. Like the bullshit he did in this particular video. His hatred for Harry and Meghan is starting to influence his ability to report on other matters. And that is very clear, and I've kept this in for months now. He is so consumed by it that he cannot report neutrally on basically anything. And you know what? That is no longer funny. At this point, I hope Lady C will also refrain from appearing on his show. I've noticed that even when she is on, he would talk over her when she says something he does not like or does not agree with. I have noticed that she sometimes professionally drops the subject to prevent an argument. Now, until this man had calmed down and can again do proper, neutral, informed and researched reporting, someone of her caliber should stay away. The same principle as most people on my channel and other channels are applying to the King and Harry should apply here. It is not doing her reputation any good or our trust in her any good to remain appearing on Dan Whitten's channel. Now look, I can continue this discussion with regards to African parks, Harry, Dan Whitten and his mates, but instead I will add links to a variety of topics you can go read for yourselves in the description box. I just want to add one more thing before we end this video and move on to the next topic in the same vein. Dan Whitten and his woke mates, other videos from other creators who are, it seems, equally lazy to go do their homework make it sound like African parks are these vicious, armed militia who are enforcing their will on the people of these countries. Wrong, 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 wrong. They enter into agreements with the governments of these countries whereby they train locals as rangers and educates locals in conservation. So those rangers who were caught doing the dirty in the Congo were indeed what? Congolese. Hence, handed over to the Congolese law enforcement agencies. I suggest that those who are interested go to their website or subscribe to the African Parks newsletter and see exactly for themselves what they do and how big the organization is. Harry is merely a member of the board at the moment. He is only one of about 40 members of the board. 7 are situated in South Africa, 12 in the United States, 6 in the Netherlands, 5 in Switzerland, 3 in Germany, 3 in the United Kingdom, and 4 in Asia. So stop giving Harry power which he does not have. And last, African Parks does not have financial issues. There has been 13% growth in finances. Yes, there had been problems similar to that in many organizations of this size, i.e. in 2025 they dismissed 3 members of staff for misusing about $14,000. And KPMG has also expressed concerns about the lack of on-the-ground checks of operations in remote areas. So yes, operational issues every darn business and charity can have, and in particular in Africa, and will have over a period of time. Nothing pointing at those who run African parks or at their overall attempts or operations. But guys, if you are that interested, go do your own homework. African parks are fairly transparent and everything you want to know is available online, or you can send a request for information via email. Their email address is available on their website. Okay, next, or in the next video, I'm going to deal with the next bit of ridiculousness. Remember, on this channel, we are trying to always be fair, whether we like the person or we don't. Okay? And I've even been trying to be fair towards Charles, and that says a darn lot. We try to tell the truth or bring the facts. We do make mistakes, and my opinions may sometimes turn out to be wrong. But in this particular instance, what I gave you here are facts. Facts which are readily available and which neither Dan Whitten nor Tom Sykes has bothered to check. Because why? Because drama sells. And I do not agree with those kind of tactics. As I said, it does more harm to individuals and organizations who actually do more good than harm. So I will never agree to this kind of tactics. Okay, guys, so that was it from me. Longer than usual video, but a very heartfelt one. Okay, friends and foes, that is it. The next video will come very soon, because it's basically it's not about African parks anymore, but it's in the same vein of false and viciously created narrative, which I do not agree with. Okay, so until then, please take good care of yourselves, stay vigilant, and stay safe. Bye.